All right, trash talkers, this season may not have been the most dramatic season yet, but we certainly did get our most dramatic episode yet so far. The Thomas fiasco has come to a head, and we're seeing how Katie feels about Blake's arrival, the mystery man. We also see a repeat group date from Tayshia's season. Nash, what do you think of the episode?
Okay, so this isn't the most dramatic season.
No, unfortunately not.
This is like tame.
I would say Matt's racism scandal season might take the cake on the most dramatic season yet. But I would say, honestly, comparatively, this season's really not that bad, which I feel like isn't saying much. But in terms of the drama, it's not as bad as other seasons I've seen. But it feels like we're stuck in this rut with the drama. I'm with Andrew S. and saying, like, I'm tired of it. I'm over it. I feel like seeing the drama and seeing the clickiness and the gossip come out of the skies this week, it soured it for me a little bit. Up until this point, I'd been really thinking these guys were pretty mature, pretty high class, pretty up there. You know, I was giving them a lot of credit, and I'm not fully taking the credit away. But I definitely think if these guys don't start to get their act together and they continue to try to form a coup against the other guys in the house until there's only a few left, I'm just going to get over it.
Okay. So you're a little upset by that.
Yeah, I just felt like it should have ended, like the drama should have ended with Carl. You know, we didn't need to go into another week of this.
I think we need more weeks of it, personally.
I don't know if I'm going to agree with you on that one, only because I feel like maybe it's because I feel or I think pretty highly of Katie in terms of her being a bachelorette, because she's very much she doesn't want to waste her time. She's really emphasized that. But sometimes she does feed into how the guys are behaving, when I consider her to be one of the more mature people in the group. Granted, I think even some of the guys, like Michael A. is probably the top tier. I think he's like the highest peak of who should be on these shows. And Katie's a little, not quite as mature as Michael A. Granted, he's one of the older guys. He's experienced a lot more life. But I'm getting to a point where I'm over the drama, but I also think I was over the drama last season because we literally did not escape it. There was always something taking away from what the point of the show was every single week. So my tolerance for it this season is just lower than I think it'd normally be.
All right. That's fair, I think.
But
makes sense at least.
Yeah. But I will say what I liked about this episode, I loved the group date. But we've seen this date before. We saw something almost exactly the same in Tayshia's season. Same concept, different events maybe. Some of them were repeats. I thought it was really funny. I really enjoyed how the guys enjoyed the date. Some of them got really, really into it. It's always funny watching grown men get waxed and not know how to handle it. That's always a treat. The little sweet nothings, especially from Greg listing the 50 states, that was a treat. A little bit of an uncomfortable treat, but a treat nonetheless.
It was weird.
Yeah, well, his date before that, he made out with her on a homemade toilet, so I don't know where we thought he was gonna go. I mean, he's kind of an awkward dude.
He's an oddball.
Yeah, he's like an odd guy, not in like a bad way. He's just definitely a little different. I feel like he's probably one of the more shy guys, and this whole season so far has seemed to be out of his comfort zone, but whispering sweet nothings into a giant plastic ear, I'd say, is definitely one of the things that'll easily make somebody feel a little weird.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I enjoyed it. I believe they did it for Tayshia's season much the same way, and I really enjoyed it again. The Pepper proposals are great. I'm a huge, huge fan of the Pepper proposal bit. I don't know that they should do it every season. I think it'll lose its luster, but I thought it was cute. And it's just funny. Watching other people, for whatever reason, watching other people suffer is always a form of comedy. But
I thought it was pretty funny too, especially how he immediately touched his eyes.
oh yeah, that's the worst possible thing you could have
It's a
done.
no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. You don't touch it.
Like I won't even front for a second. I cannot handle spice to save my life. I wish I could. I'm just not that person. You're not that guy. You're not that guy. But it is really funny watching the guys freak out. Some of them handled it like champs. Some of them very much did not. But either way, I thought it was overall a good date. Into the night, most of that cheeriness seemed to continue up until the subject of Thomas came up. We saw a little bit of beef begin to form between Trey and Andrew S. Whether or not that beef continues, and the tension continues now that you know who is eventually booted, we'll get to that later. We gotta talk about that conversation they had, because I feel like a lot of people took that conversation very different ways. Personally, I felt that both of them made pretty excellent points when you get right down to it, because I think obviously for every point they made, there was a rebuttal, or there could be a rebuttal. But
yeah,
both of them, I'm having mixed feelings about Trey, only because I felt like I thought his intentions in telling her were mostly pure up until he started talking about how it would open up maybe the potential for him to get the date rose that night. And that kind of soured my opinion of him just a little bit. I gotta say, I did like Trey in the beginning because he's got this childish side to him. You know, he's not really afraid to do things that are a little wacky, a little goofy. He's just trying to have a good time, which we saw on the date, but that night it felt like he was really trying to stoke a fire, and I do believe he thought his intentions were good, but I'm not sure that I ultimately agree with his decision to tell Katie the way he told Katie, because even he exaggerated how he portrayed that situation to her. Completely exaggerated it, which certainly didn't help. I know there's always things we don't see in this show, but we did hear Thomas say, you know, he had considered it. And any guy that says they haven't considered it is probably a liar. However, not every guy is a big enough idiot to say it in front of every single other person there.
Yeah, no, I think that was probably, and that's probably why I kind of enjoyed the drama, because it seemed to actually cut at the root of something genuine. It wasn't sort of just like made up drama, you know what I mean? With like, I remember we were watching Matt that season, the whole Queen Victoria stuff, that seemed all like just made up because of her, you know what I mean? Whereas here, I have to agree when Thomas said that everybody's considered it. Like, I think 100% guaranteed every guy there has considered it.
Yeah, 100%. Because I feel like you have, especially considering that they had to quarantine for 2 weeks alone in a hotel room. It's like, I imagine during that time and leading up to it, as soon as you find out that, hey, you're going to be on The Bachelorette, you're going to consider every different scenario of how that could end up in your head. For anyone who knows the shows, one of those scenarios for every single guy is going to be that they could potentially be the next Bachelor. And even if not the next Bachelor, they could be on Bachelor in Paradise. They could do 1,000,001 things. You know, like we said before, a lot of these people, when they go on these reality shows, they usually don't go back to their day jobs. And I don't think that's lost on anyone. That's not a secret. It's very much, you know, you follow these guys on social media, and even if you don't, you probably hear about it. So I don't judge Thomas. I personally didn't judge Thomas for admitting to it, but I still think he's kind of a phony guy.
Yeah, no, he definitely seemed phony, and it seemed that to be like that was sort of a major point for him. Like that was almost his primary intent, not necessarily that he enjoyed her as much, but he would rather have the opportunity to have 30 women chasing after him.
Oh yeah.
In one stance. So that kind of, for me, that's what I got off of it, but he was totally right in that point. Like, they're definitely, you have to be just like an utter idiot to not consider, because they're like three options, you know. Either the worst thing that happens is you go home on night one and nothing comes of it. Worst thing that happens. And then you either have the best being you marry the person who's the bachelor or the bachelorette, or you become the next bachelor or bachelorette. Like, that's really all that those are the biggest things going through your mind. So of course everybody is like, well, if at least I make it past the first night, I've got the chance for something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a definitely an accurate point, and I probably would have liked to see more of it, because I think you can kind of root out some people that is their sort of intention, or at least they're not bringing the same energy towards Katie that other people who seem more concerned with her are.
I will say, I am really torn about Thomas. Definitely leaning towards that. Like, I'm not saying I trust the guy at all. I think he probably lied a lot. I think he is a very smooth talker. But again, I am hesitant to be like, oh, this guy sucks. He's manipulative. He's toxic, blah, 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 blah. Only because I'm sure there's stuff that we don't get to see. But with that being said, there could have been a lot worse things that were said and that had happened that we don't get to see that really does make him out to be a villain. Because whenever people are painted as a villain in this show, I try not to judge too harshly.
Try to take a step back at least.
Yeah, because it's like,
you don't know what all the sides.
Exactly. I don't know what was edited out, and I feel like this episode was really edited to make him a villain. Whether or not he is, I mean, likelihood is, yeah, he probably is a little bit of a villain. He probably is kind of manipulative. You know, guys who are like that, they don't just learn that overnight. They just don't learn that the second they find out they're going to be on The Bachelorette, right?
And I will have to say, with the parts that they did show us, like, the extra time and liberties he took in talking to Katie, like, especially at the rose ceremony and before the rose ceremony, like, I assume that's very unique, and those types of things never happen or happen very rarely, and I think that kind of behavior just pulls more to the point of he's trying to hedge his bets.
Yeah, I definitely think he was probably more aware than maybe a lot of the guys of how he would potentially be perceived, not only by the guys, but on television. Like, he was a very calculated person. Granted, with cancel culture and how, you know, trigger happy people are with that, and obviously anyone who's followed anything about Bachelor news knows how just straight up judgmental the fan base is. Like, not to shoot myself in the foot here, but I think Bachelor fans are probably some of the most brutal fans out there. You know, a lot of the memes are based in bullying people for their physical appearance on the show or anything else they do. So if you follow that kind of stuff, you see how truly brutal people can be when you're being placed on a TV and all of a sudden you're something other. You know, you're not on the same level as every other civilian. It dehumanizes people, and it makes them a lot easier to put a target on their back to make ourselves feel good. So that's kind of my counter argument for him being so calculated. But again, in all likelihood, I'm probably giving the guy a little bit too much credit.
I get you. I think we've looked at it from a smart way, because there is always going to be that stuff we don't see. And especially when everybody else's opinion is so geared towards him, it kind of feels like a mob. Like, I really despise mob mentalities for a lot of things, because they're so destructive. They have no rationale or reasoning. And you get a result like this where Trey, you know, was trying to do the right thing, but he portrayed it in a way that made it seem a much more egregious than like what was actually said, you know?
Yeah. I like that you brought up mob mentality, because I think that is something very, very unique to this house of guys. It's not, I mean, we usually see it like there's cliques and things like that, and the cliques will team up, and we saw it last season with the girls. There were cliques. And that's fine. That's going to happen. People are going to find people that they get along with better and they get these groups. That's kind of expected and normal. What isn't expected and normal is what we've seen happen twice now, where the vast majority of the house is ganging up on one single person. We saw it happen with Carl, and now we saw it happen with Thomas. Granted, I think that was I don't want to say self-brought. It's not the victim's fault, even if they kind of put themselves in a poor spot. But we don't normally see the entire house go against one person the way we did to this level, at least. So that's another thing that kind of it's not sitting well with me. You have your few guys who are contributing when asked, but they're not going really, really heavy. Like, we saw a lot of strong language from Trey, from Aaron, which we saw last time. These guys are not only being very vocal, but they're really choosing words that I feel like are already dramatic in and of themselves, and it's making a dramatic situation even worse. And again, the ultimate thing is, like, a lot of guys have said it, we've said it, but at the end of this, like, this is Katie's real life. For some of these guys, long term, it's going to have no effect on them. Like, she's trying to set the path for the rest of her life. And granted, I think this season, more than most, the contestants and the guys are very cognizant of that. But just because they understand it doesn't mean they're acting like they understand it. They're saying it, but a lot of them, I feel like their actions are not super consistent with what they're actually doing.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point. And that was something I noticed a lot this episode, was sort of like how they're all talking and the sort of reiterations that they are making. It seems like almost all the guys have a sound bite of them saying, well, because we're all here for Katie, and I think we all understand that. I feel like everybody's saying that. Like, I feel like their need to say that, especially for a lot of them there, makes them seem way more disingenuous. Like, a lot of people don't have a personality outside of that beef that happened.
Mm-hmm. I think I said this last week, and I'm going to repeat it again here. Anyone who's seen this show or follows it or understands the fan base, it's super, super easy to know the right things to say. Whether you're saying them to the Bachelorette themselves, you're saying it to the other people in the house, or you're saying it to the camera, you don't even have to practice those lines. All you have to know is in the back of your head, I am going to be the subject of a lot of criticism or a lot of praise based on what I say right now. And I feel like these guys came in not only prepared for who Katie was, but for who the audience is and for who is producing this show. I feel like guys that I don't think fall into that category is Andrew S., Michael. Like, these guys I feel like are very much genuine. Even Connor B., you don't pull up first night in a cat suit if you care what other people really think of you on TV. So I feel like there's a few sprinkles of guys there that really just don't care. They're not always going to be super, super conscious of the audience, but I feel like a lot of these guys are maybe a little bit more educated than previous seasons in what to do.
Well, one thing that I notice a lot, and it's kind of, I feel the same way about Connor and Michael. Like, I feel like they are genuine about it. And a lot of it comes from how, like, they actually talk to her. Like, when Trey, in particular, like, when he just talks to her, his sort of emotional tone, like, the energy, at least, does not seem equal to Katie's. Like, it doesn't seem like he's talking, like, with her. He's just kind of saying things at her. You know what I mean? Like, I get the same feeling with Aaron. And Aaron, I think, is probably the best example of what I said earlier, where it's like somebody that their entire personality isn't there. It's just the incidents that have been going on. Like, I don't see distinction between those people. They just seem to be like commentators in those events, and it lacks sort of it honestly dehumanizes themselves for what they're doing. Whereas Michael and Connor, it's like they seem like actual people, and I sort of understand their personalities just with how they talk and what they talk about.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with you. But the way I've been viewing both Trey and Aaron up until this point is I'm just attributing their behavior to maturity levels. To be completely honest, I gave Aaron a little bit of heat for it last week when we talked for the same reason. I just feel like they're both kind of immature. And I'm not really sure either of them can read the room, to go off of your point where Trey's kind of talking at her, not talking with her. Like, he might be having a good time, but it's almost like putting a really excited puppy in a room and he's just running around doing everything else than like paying attention to the person in the room, waiting to take care of this puppy. Like, in my head, Trey's just a big puppy. He means well, but sometimes puppies are going to make a mess and they're going to cause trouble. And I feel like that's what Trey did this week. I personally, like I said, I think he made some good points. I get where he was coming from, but ultimately, I agree 100% with Andrew S. I think if Katie's asking it, well, Katie's, I guess, in this situation was a little bit confusing because on the one hand, she's asking the guys to trust her. On the other hand, she is saying like, hey, if there's things going on, I do want to know those things. But I think when it came to Thomas, I would have went with Andrew S. and said, let her figure it out. Eventually she's going to see through it. Because I do think I think she was just very much attracted to Thomas. I don't think there was anything other there than that initial, like, oh, wow, this guy is really pretty. He's telling me nice things, seeing where it goes. But I don't think he would have lasted much longer anyway, because we saw no substance from him. You can only say the same 3 speeches so many times before someone's going to be like, okay, wait, we've only ever had this conversation. I know nothing about you. And I think Katie would have eventually came to that conclusion herself.
Yeah, and I think, like, I sort of felt like I agree what Trey was doing. Like, yes, I think in that position I would probably be upfront about it, mainly because I hate drama like that. But I kind of agree with Andrew, too, in the fact that their concern over the matter was bigger than their concern for Katie, I think. I think that's what I got from him. And I agree with that point. Like, their entire energy being wrapped into it seems sort of misguided, a misguided use of their focus.
Yeah, I actually think both Aaron and Trey are taking the actions of the other men personally instead of them thinking it's personal against Katie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. And I dropping think bombs over here.
That's why they're so involved, is because they're seeing these things happen and being like, well, it's taking away from who they are with Katie, and especially Trey. In the last week's episode, said, oh, people don't trick me, and you tricked me like 3 times. Like, so we know this is a personal thing for him. This isn't for Katie.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's like, what would The Bachelor do? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You picking up what I'm putting down?
All right, I'm not sure I agree with you that either of them is vying for The Bachelor.
I heard agree with me.
You choose to hear what you want to hear sometimes. One more thing I want to talk about before we move on from this cocktail party after this group date is I want to raise a little bit of a red flag, and I want to make a little bit of a prediction, because it was a very small detail. I'm not sure a lot of people I've seen are talking about it. I want to bring up Greg. After this group day, or during this group day, I should say, we get a little snippet, just a little soundbite from Greg, and he's talking about how he started to feel jealous in this group date, and jealous of the other guys getting that time with Katie and having to see it. For anyone who watched Matt James' season of The Bachelor, this is what it made me think of immediately. I thought of Sarah from last season, who became extremely jealous, extremely insecure, coupled with personal things she had going on in her life back home. But she ended up self-eliminating because it got to be all too much for her. It put a giant target on her back because every time she felt jealous or insecure, she would interrupt conversations. She would get extra private time with Matt and he would console her. It put a giant target on her back. And I think we're going to see a similar situation with Greg. Maybe not to that extreme because I don't think the other men are going to pick up on it as much. And I don't think Greg is confident enough to assert himself and take that extra time and ask for that, consolation and that attention from Katie like we saw with Sarah and Matt. But I think ultimately, I don't think Greg's going to make it because I just don't think he's going to be able to handle how the rest of it's going to progress.
Wow. Astute point to make, and I will consider it. Jealousy is a tough thing, man. It's a tough thing.
It's a tough thing, and I get it and I don't, because on the one hand, you signed up for this, you know how it works, you know how it goes. But at the same time, it's really, really easy to say that when it's not actively happening. I've always been a person who, whenever I've been in a tiff with someone and they would say...
a tiff.
I don't even know if that's a word. It just felt right. Anyway, moving past that one. Whenever I've had... I don't know, I guess relationship issues is really specifically what I'm thinking of, and the other person has said, well, if you did that to me, I wouldn't feel that way. I would always bring up 2 points that would always get disregarded because I haven't had the best of relationships leading up to this point in my life. And the one point was always that, well, one, we're different people. Just because you wouldn't feel this way from this action doesn't mean I shouldn't feel this way. And the second point being, it's very easy to say you wouldn't feel that way when I'm not actively putting you in that situation, which I think are very good points. They were always fully ignored, but I always thought they were really good points. And I think that's going to be relevant here when we're saying, oh, these guys know what they signed up for, this and the other thing. It's like, yeah, they did know what they signed up for, but a lot of them just couldn't have imagined what that feels like in reality when you're thinking of it as a concept.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point to make.
I know they're both very, very strong points.
Do you feel glad now that it's been acknowledged?
I needed the validation, actually. All right, so moving on. In case we didn't mention it, since we're moving on from our group date, Trey was given the rose from that group date because he came forward and talked about Thomas. Again, not sure I would have... Yeah, I don't think they're going to be compatible, and I think it's going to be for the reason we already talked about, where Trey's so concerned with everything. It's almost like he's too distracted by the other guys, by the situations.
Distracted is a great word to use.
Yeah, I really feel like it's like a kid walking into the biggest toy store they've ever seen. Their brain is just going to fry. Like, they're going to be in overload. And I think that's where Trey is, because, again, not in a bad way. He's one of the younger guys. I'm not saying it as a knock against him. I just think he's not as mature as some of the other guys on this show. And I think because he's not really matured yet, this is all new and exciting and fun. But for a lot of the other guys, like for a guy like Michael, he's serious about this. This isn't just some fun, spontaneous thing for him to do. Like, this is potentially going to be who's helping him raise his son. So the stakes and the maturity level are a lot different between some of these guys. Another thing we have to talk about that was really big from this episode was the mystery man from Tayshia's season who wanted to meet Katie was revealed. That guy is Blake. Again, this is one of those things where a lot of people have very different opinions on it. I really liked Blake during Claire and Tayshia's season. I will say one of the things against him is he fell pretty fast for both of them. You know, he was one of the few guys who actually felt a pretty good connection to Claire before she left. He made it pretty far in Tayshia's season and then was sent home. And even when Tayshia sent him home, she was kind of like afterwards, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Like, he was a great guy. And it is. I think Blake's a pretty good guy. I think he's a pretty genuine guy. He's a little goofy, but I think ultimately he's pretty down to earth. I don't think there's an ulterior motive here for Blake. And a lot of people are, questioning that, like, did he not get called back from Bachelor in Paradise? Is that why he showed up? That was a running joke. Personally, this is what I think happened, because one thing we do know that Katie has admitted to is they did talk very, very briefly when she got kicked off Matt's season. When I say briefly, it was just kind of a DM, not even a DM, like a visual message. Like, he sent a video being like, hey, that was really cool what you did great. And she sent a video back. I was actually listening to Nick Files' podcast today that he had Katie on, and they talked a little bit about this because Nick called her out and he was like, hey, people think you guys talked before, did you? And this is what the context she gave, is they sent those videos because a lot of these guys on these shows, or these previous contestants, will reach out to people when they get kicked off and send them videos, because then they can't screenshot anything after they've watched the video disappears. So it's a little sneaky trick that these Bachelor alum pull, but...
Wait till they figure out you can screen record. That'll
yeah,
be
right?
the day.
So the technology is there. The future is here. But I think, and I genuinely think this is what happened, I think Blake sent that message out. At the time of him sending that message, I would guess that Katie might have already known or had already been contacted about her potentially becoming the Bachelorette. Because a lot of these alum do intermingle and date each other and do all these things of their own accord, whether they're in, Bachelor in Paradise or just doing it the old natural way, sending a message in the DMs and seeing what happens. So I think Blake was shooting his shot. Katie didn't act on it because she knew she was already, or had an inkling at least, that she could have been the Bachelorette, so she couldn't commit to anything. And once it was revealed that she was the Bachelorette, Blake knew at that point this would be his only chance to try something with someone that he was interested in. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying this is actually for a pure reason. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see how far he makes it. I think they're going to have a connection, not only because they're both pretty sex-positive people when that's not something we always see, but I think they're also both down-to-earth people, and I also think they're both serious daters. That's another phrase that Katie's used a lot, because Blake was fully in with both Claire and Tayshia. Like, he wasn't fooling around with this process, and I don't think Katie is either. So I think for those reasons, they are going to form a connection.
Yeah, I am filled with doubt. I think he's a phony. And yeah, that's really about it. That he's been on the show so many times. I don't think he really cares. Totally opposite camp.
All
as
right,
you.
so we're taking very, very
and that's just my
different
2
approaches
cents. I
to
have
that.
no
But I
prior
would get why
knowledge.
you
I
think
just
that,
think
and I
he's
think
a
a lot of
scumbag.
people are going to think that he's there for the wrong reason. It's definitely going to stir up a lot of issues in the house.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If he doesn't end up being like one of the final 3 or 4, which I would say I'd put money on the fact that he's going to make it that far. But I think regardless of whatever drama this is going to cause, I don't think Blake is being sent away anytime
We'll see him
soon
next
is my
season.
ultimate point.
Sorry.
We'll see.
All right.
I mean, I
right.
don't know
Well,
if
I
I
hope
feel
he
this way
does.
because
Hope he gets
everything
sent
I
away real
said
quick, but I don't
is
think he will.
accurate.
They're not
I
gonna
mean, it
send him
sounded
away.
pretty good in my head. But I don't know if it's that or if I just have a soft spot for Blake because I was a favorite of him, last Bachelorette season. I didn't like him for Tayshia, but I did like him a lot for Claire. So I don't know. I got a soft spot for the guy. I will say he's a wildlife manager, always advocating for animals. So that right off the bat is going to going to get to me pretty fast, but we'll see. I'm putting bets down that he's going to last a while. And I think if she tries to send him away, he's not going to go away easy. Because I think he's going to fall very, very fast for Katie.
I think he's a phony. So he's just filled with lies, and that's all he is and ever will be. I don't know who he is. For anybody listening, I have no idea who he is. So don't take it that seriously.
I don't think
please.
all of our 6 listeners are taking it too personally.
Hey. Rude.
One thing I will say to Katie's credit is I appreciated how concerned she was about keeping Blake. You know, I felt like ultimately she chose to do what she wanted to do, but she was very hesitant to do that as to not hurt any of the guys there, which I thought was very respectful, and I understood it. Again, I think in a situation like this, when you are the Bachelorette, you have to make choices for yourself because it is your life that is going to be affected by the end result of this. But I do respect her hesitance to just accept Blake open arms. But we'll see how it works out for them. I also did respect how she kind of called him out and was like, hey, you've dated 2 of the previous Bachelorettes in the last year, and one of them is now the host of this show. So that will be an interesting dynamic. I'm actually, just to see how that plays out when he sees Tayshia and they interact, I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be fun.
I think that'll be fun. Funny at the very least.
So following the Blake debacle, we start to go into the rose ceremony. Again, we see Thomas take that private time with Katie, trying to explain himself. And something we don't see is the guys are probably waiting there late because Christian mentions after Thomas is like, hey, I didn't want to waste any of your guys' time. Sorry. Christian's like, dude, it's midnight. Like, what do you mean you didn't want to waste any of our time? It's literally the next day. So that's something we don't normally get a timeline of how long these nights go or when they end, when the cutoff is. So that was a little funny to me, but I took it literally. I don't know why he would have said it if it wasn't literal.
Well, because it's like when the clock strikes midnight, it's like that's you know what I mean? Like he was doing it right at the last second.
No offense to Christian, but I have a feeling that he is not aware of that saying.
Okay. Cinderella, I'm sorry. I saw it when I was young. And
I will say, during Thomas's speech, I was kind of, I don't want to say falling for it a little bit, but I was falling for it a little bit. I was believing him when he gave Katie that speech leading up to the rose ceremony. What, weirdly enough, made me not trust Thomas was that, not the suit. I actually thought the suit was quite flattering. What made me not trust...
So you like the salmon? You're a fan of the salmon? I'm a
fan of the salmon. Always have been.
I'm going to write that down. I've got salmon pants. I have to write that down.
Always been a fan of salmon. And I know the only guys who wear salmon are the guys that you shouldn't hang out with. But I've always been a fan of the salmon.
Hello.
But no, what really just kind of made me think, okay, he's totally faking everything he's saying that's pre-prepared, is he hugged her goodbye, and I swear I've never seen a more awkward hug. That hug said everything that his lips didn't, which was that he doesn't actually care for Katie, he is practicing what he's saying, he is a smooth talker, and he was there for clout. All of his words, I fell for it. I think a lot of people would have. It was the hug.
Oh my god.
It was that body language that did it for me.
That robot arm hug, he looked like one of those things, like the automated arms that like puts cars together. That's how
it literally looked like a bad animatronic in Disney World, that hug. But after that,
you're totally right on that one.
Yeah, it was weird, and I think if he was genuine in how he felt, the hug wouldn't have felt so cold, because I think that's a good word to describe it, is the hug felt cold. There was no emotion there, despite what he told us. So those two things just didn't add up to me visually, not in my head. It was weird. And I think after that, Thomas probably knew he was done for. He knew that was the end of his journey. He avoided the other guys. He took to himself. So I think he knew that that was it. Not only for his time on The Bachelorette, but his chances of being the Bachelor were long gone.
I really hope he's the next Bachelor. I'm not going to lie.
I don't know who it's going to be, but I would probably not watch a season with Thomas. And I say probably because I don't want to guarantee it and then have to go back on my word.
You'd watch it.
If we're still doing this podcast by that point, I'd kind of have to. We got to give the people what we think they want. Whether or not they want whether or not they actually want it, I don't really know, but we got to at least try. So we did see a handful of guys go home tonight. Christian being one of them that a lot of people were kind of upset by, only because he's pretty. I feel like we haven't seen anything else from Christian other than he's pretty.
Who is Christian? Is he the firefighter?
No, that's Brendan. Christian he kind of looks like he probably played lacrosse in high school and would be the type of guy to say, I could have went D1 if I didn't hurt my shoulder. He's like very much.
Was he the really skinny guy?
He's pretty skinny. He's very much a bro type. Like, this man was probably in Pike in college type of bro.
Okay.
I feel like as soon as I show you a picture of him when we're done recording, you're going to know exactly who I'm talking about. And be like, yeah, no, that's totally right.
All right. I think I know who you're talking about. People liked him. Well, I obviously didn't even know who he was.
It's because he's pretty. You know, it's the same reason why Katie was so infatuated with Thomas. If you're pretty, people are going to like you. It doesn't matter what you actually did. If people are attracted to you, then you're going to be a fan favorite. I think we're probably going to see Christian again on another Bachelor theme thing. I don't think he's going to be the Bachelor, but I don't think we're going to see the end of him just because people liked him so much. Another thing some really, really loved, some were a little critical of, is that, dare I say, jaw-dropping move by Katie calling Thomas up as if he was going to receive a rose and then taking that step back. What did you think of that?
Got him. I loved it. Just enough spice of drama. I love it. You know, if he's going to be the one taking up extra time. Yeah, you'll give him his extra time. Extra time to walk out the door. Mic drop.
All right.
I liked it.
Big reaction from you this time. I will say, initially, I really, really liked it. I felt like this was a part where I felt like there really must have been something we missed, because Katie went from, you know, kind of feeling a little sympathetic towards him to almost publicly humiliating him on national television. Like, that was a very cold move. You know, I definitely, to an extent, I respect it, because it's like, all right, like, we get it. You just set the precedent. Like, any guy past this that starts something, they know what's coming for them. At the same time, I felt like it is on national TV. Like, we know this guy's face. We know his full name. You know, like, you don't walk away from something like that. You don't ever get to forget that something like that happened to you and that the entire world saw it. So for that reason, I think it was a little harsh on Katie's part. And I did actually say this last season when she was on Matt James' season, and she lost her cool a little bit. And I think, like, Katie's got a little bit of a temper. She's got some claws that she's not afraid to show. And she definitely showed them on this week's episode. Again, it's not... I respect the confidence and the boldness, but I think it was a little harsh unless something extreme happened.
Huh. Alright, I get you. You know what? I think I'm going to agree with that.
I mean, I feel like part of me is being a little too empathetic to this guy, but at the same time, it's like, man, if that happened to me, I'd be pretty mortified. I'd be deleting all of my social media and becoming a hermit for at least a year.
I kind of think he deserved it. That's honestly. I think he deserved it. That's what it
I
comes down
hope
to.
when it gets to the point where we get a men tell all episode, I really would love Thomas to be on it, and I'd love to hear more from him. Not necessarily to justify what he did and hear his side, but I'd be really, really curious to know what else there is to be said about this whole story that brought up that reaction. So I'm hoping Thomas is on Men Tell All later in the season.
I mean, have fun selling real estate, dude. Well, he's probably really good at it because he just lies to people. Never mind. That was stupid.
Yeah, he's probably actually doing very well for himself, Nash, since you're going to bring it up.
Yeah, he's probably doing incredible for himself. He just proved to everybody he's super manipulative and he's in real estate, so yeah.
That's what you get for being a sweet talker. Sweet talkers are, if they're not in real estate, they're definitely in finance. Tell me I'm wrong.
All right, I'm not. Calm down.
So with that, let's get to our love 'em or leave 'em for the week. For love 'em this week, I gotta say Andrew S. and Michael A. again. I think he's continuing to be just a very genuine guy on this show. I think he's taking the process very seriously, and everything he says to Katie just absolutely melts my heart, and I 100% think he's being very genuine about it. But my leave 'em for this week, I gotta say Aaron's staying on my leave 'em list. I don't think he's got anything in common with Katie. I think he's immature, I think he's a little dramatic, and I think he's gonna go home soon. The other guy I'm putting on that list is Courtney, because we haven't really seen anything dramatic or ingenuine from him, but I feel like he's probably there for the clout as well, and that's probably going to get brought up in the coming weeks.
That is really funny you say that, because you know, who is that? The lady on last season of The Bachelor that we watched, was it like Sarah, who's the hairdresser or whatever, that we're like, she's probably not going to win, but we really like her?
Oh.
Do you remember
MJ.
who I'm talking about? MJ, that's what it was. I don't know why I said Sarah. Either way. I feel like Courtney's kind of like that, because I feel like he doesn't like do a lot, but he's just like kind of there, you know? Like, I don't have anything against him, but like I haven't seen him do anything, and he's always there, and they always interview him.
But I think Courtney's probably a little disingenuous. I don't trust him. He hasn't, you know what it is that when all the other guys were kind of freaking out about the Thomas situation, and we got that little clip of Thomas talking to Courtney, it almost felt like Courtney was kind of, not that he said this, it's just the vibe I got, where his attitude was like, thank God it's you and not me, because I'm in the same boat. You know what I mean? Like, where Courtney knew that he wasn't there for the right reasons and was probably keeping his distance from everyone, because should it come out that he wasn't there for the right reason, he knew that he was going to end up exactly where Thomas was. That's the vibe I got from him during that conversation.
Oh.
And I think that's going to happen to him.
Hot take.
That's my prediction. I made a lot of predictions this episode, and I really do feel like I'm going to have some winners. I'm going to be right.
You know what? You're not, because I'm going to be right. But I think, that's some interesting stuff to see. I think I've agreed with most of them. They seem pretty logical. I enjoyed Michael A. as well. He seems very genuine. I also enjoy Connor. He also seems very genuine, because I don't think we saw a lot of either of them this episode. But the parts that we did see were pretty level-headed, and they didn't look like they were repeating the same taglines everybody else was. I'm gonna leave Trey, because I don't think I have anything against him. I just think it's kind of wasting time. I don't think it works out from what we've seen with him so far, because we've seen a lot of him. I just don't think there's enough to go on for him and Katie. And then Blake, I don't trust him. He's a two-tongued lying backstabber, and so, he should be out of the show immediately, effective immediately, yeah.
All right. I don't know what you have against Blake, but it's got to be something pretty good.
That's it. I don't think you do the show 3 times, and or like, oh no, I really care this time.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I don't believe
I guess that's just how dating works. Granted, it's not always on TV, but that's kind of how dating works.
Or with 50 people in the same. It's not how that works.
Yeah, no. Agree to disagree. All right, well, Thomas, you might not become the Bachelor, but you certainly did steal this week's episode, whether you wanted the attention or not. I really hope that's the end of the drama, but I know it won't be because the guys still do not know that Blake is there. We're going to see how that plays out next week. Until then, that's a wrap on this episode of Trash Talk TV.